This lesson, guys, we're going to be solving multi-step equations. We did two-step equations last time, so these equations are going to involve 3, 4, maybe even 5 different steps to be able to solve for a variable to get x, y by itself. Now, before we get into the examples that you'll be expected to do, which are kind of down here at the bottom and on the back, we are going to check our skills. The big things for today are being able to use the distributive property, which we'll cover here, and being able to combine like terms. So let's check that we can do those two things. If we can't do those two things, we will never be able to solve a multi-step equation. So remind yourself that when you combine things, the two terms that you're combining, or however many terms there are, they have to be what's called like terms. So on number 1, these are like terms, the 4y and the y. The plus sign separates the terms. They're like terms because they both have a y on them. So I can add them together. Realize that if there is no number in front, this is just a plain 1y. So when I add them together, 4 plus 1, that's 5 y's. Now, when I'm multiplying, which is example 2, I can multiply anything. It doesn't matter that the 4 doesn't have a y on it. I just multiply the 6 times 4, and I stick the y onto that number and say 24y. Back to when it's adding or subtracting, you have to have like terms to be able to add. These are not like terms because the 6 does not have a y on it, so I cannot put these together. So that is simplified, or the best possible answer that it could be, just as is. For number 4, again, I'm looking for like terms, so I see x's. Realize that the sign in front of a number goes with it. So this is negative 7x, and this is positive 10x. Negative 7 plus 10, just add them together, that's 3 x's. And then the constants, or the plain numbers, I have a positive 1 and a positive 9. So 1 plus 9, that would be 10. Okay, so that's just kind of checking our skills on how we combine what's called like terms. We've got to be able to do that today. I also have to remember how to use the distributive property. Now, you use the distributive property when you have stuff in parentheses with a number sitting out front. When you distribute, like if I was going to distribute the papers to the class, I would pass one out to everybody. Or in other words, in math, this number that sits outside the parentheses, you give that number, or you multiply that number to every term inside the parentheses. Okay, so when you distribute, you multiply. Just going to make that note. So I'm going to do, and again, I can multiply anything, whether there are like terms or not. Negative 2 times b is negative 2b. Be very careful here. This is a negative 2. Again, the sign that goes in front of a number is connected to it. So this is a negative 4. Negative 2 times negative 4 is positive 8. I can't add those together. They're not like terms, so I leave it. The second little example here, again, I know to distribute because I see stuff in parentheses with a number sitting out front. Order of operations, you have to multiply or distribute this number before you can do the subtraction out front. Now, I want you to make a note that when you distribute, you take the sign with the number when you do that multiplication work. And I'm going to be lazy and use the number sign. So take the sign with the number. What I mean by that is this is a negative 2. That negative is with the 2. So when I distribute, I have to take the negative with it, and I do negative 2 times y, which is negative 2y. And then negative 2 times positive 4 is negative 8. If I were to bring the 3 down, now I can keep simplifying. I can combine like terms, kind of like I did on this example here. And I would do 3, and I just always think of adding. 3 plus negative 8 is negative 5. So I would say negative 2y minus 5. Okay, so that was kind of like a lot of work within that one little problem. But those two things, those are the two steps that I'm going to have you think of when you're solving a multi-step equation. So the first thing that you want to take care of, if you have it in the problem, is distributing. Okay, so if you're solving for p or x, whatever it is, and there's a lot going on, look for distributing. If you can do that, take care of that first. Once you've multiplied through and you're distributing, the second step would be to see if you can combine anything. Okay, you might not be able to, but look for it. If you've got x in two places, get those together. Same thing with the constants, the plain numbers. Once you've done those two things, then it should just be like a two-step equation, what we did last time. So hopefully it's not too terrible from there. You just solve it from there. All right, let's do a few examples. So these examples involve distributing. Problem A, I know I've got distributing. I see parentheses with the number sitting out front. So I'm going to multiply that 2 to both terms inside. 2 times 8 is 16, plus, you can just bring that sign down, 2 times p is 2p, and that equals 22. If it helps you, you can draw that line down the equal sign. That shows you what's on the left and the right. Hopefully you don't have to draw that, but if it's helpful, go for it. Now think what we did last time. I can't combine the 16 and the 2p because they're not like terms, but I've just got a two-step equation. So hopefully I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable with this. I know that I need to move what's not connected to the variable first. So the 16 and the 2 need to move to the other side, move the 2 last. Remember we said you do the opposite of the sign in front of a number. So this is a positive 16, therefore I need to subtract 16 from both sides to make that cancel. Okay, so bring down the 2p. Then I've got 22 minus 16, which is 6. I know that this means I'm just multiplying by 2, so to get rid of that 2, I need to do the opposite and divide. Do that on both sides. And I end up getting p equals 3. Okay, feel free. I'm not going to do this on the notes this time, the checking part like I did last time, but especially if like it was a quiz, it'd be super smart to just go to your calculator. You could just type it in if you're checking on your practice problems. Ooh, that glare's bad. But I just put 3 in right here, plugged it into my calculator like it looked, and yeah, that does equal 22. So I'm good. Again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to check all these on the notes. Example B, I want you to try that one on your own. Okay, I'll check that next time in class. Example C, I've got distributing. I'm going to draw the line through the equal sign. Oh, fun! I'm distributing a fraction. This will be good times. All right, let's bring down the 24. Haven't done anything with that yet. Now I need to do 3/4 times 12. So off to the side here, I'm going to work that out because I know I can't use a calculator on this first quiz. Now I'm going to make 12 a fraction by putting it over 1. I do not need a common denominator when I'm multiplying fractions. So 3 times 12, I multiply across, is 36. 4 times 1 is 4. Oh, this is nice. 36 divided by 4, that's just 9. So 3/4 times 12 is just 9. And it's got the x on there since the 12 had the x. Then I need to do 3/4 times 8. So again, I'm going to do that off to the side here. Make it 8 over 1. Don't need a common denominator, so just multiply across. 3 times 8 is 24. 4 times 1 is 4. And this works out nice too. 24 divided by 4 is just 6. Okay, that's a lot easier. I need to get x alone. Move what's not connected. So this plus 6, I'm going to undo that by subtracting 6 on both sides. Okay, that leaves me 9x on the right, and that gives me 18 on the left. So then I'm going to divide by 9, and I get x equals 2. I'm not going to check it for the sake of time, but realize you totally could. Ooh. Kind of cut myself short on space there. All right, example D. Here's an example where this little note comes into play. When you're distributing, you have to take the sign with the number when you multiply. Okay, so be careful. Order of operations, distributing first. You have to multiply before you can do 6 minus 3 here. People will make this mistake. They'll say, oh, 6 minus 3, that's 3, and then I distribute that. You'll get it wrong every time, so be careful. Don't do anything with the 6 yet. This is a negative 3 sitting outside your parentheses. That's what needs to be distributed. So I'm just going to bring this 6 down. Negative 3 times x is just minus 3x. Then it's negative 3 times positive 7, which is negative 21. So write minus 21. Okay, draw your line if you need it. Here's an example where I distributed, and then I can also combine like terms. None of the other ones could I combine anything, but now I can combine stuff sitting on one side. I see two constants, two plain numbers. Be careful with your signs. That's 6, and that's negative 21. Just add them. 6 plus negative 21 is negative 15. Bring down your minus 3x equals 18. Now I just need to get x alone. I've got a two-step equation. Move what's not connected. This is a negative 15, so add 15 to both sides. Okay, that will cancel. And I've got a negative 3x equals 33. Then my last step would just be to divide by negative 3. Run out of space, but that's just negative 11. All right, on the back, so I'm going to do A. I want you guys to try B, and I'll check that tomorrow and see how you're doing. Example A, think about my steps. I don't have distributing on this one. There's no parentheses. So I'm just going to be combining like terms because I see that I can combine a couple things sitting over here on the left side of the equation. I see n in two places. You've got to put those together and be careful with your signs. This is negative 3 plus negative 2. Negative 3 plus negative 2 is negative 5n's. Bring down your plus 4. Same thing. After you take care of these two steps, you guys, it's going to be probably a two-step equation. Ours has been every time. So now I'm going to subtract 4. And then divide by negative 5. Notice again, I'm showing my work really clearly. This is really easy for me to read what I'm doing. I want to see you doing this. I want to see your thought process, your steps. That way I can be a little bit more lenient when I grade your work if you make a mistake. So I get negative 1. All right, last example. These are called proportions. Now, if you've got a fraction equaling another fraction, that's exactly what a proportion is. Okay, you've seen these before, hopefully. Everybody hates fractions. So the goal on a proportion is to get rid of the fractions. You maybe have heard of the butterfly method. I'm not that cute and fancy, so I just do what's called cross multiplying. Okay, if you see a proportion, fraction equals fraction, cross multiply to get rid of the fractions. So what I mean by that is I'm going to put a giant X through my equal sign, and I'm going to multiply the two pieces on each little cross here. So bring down your equal sign. Don't forget that. That's still there. Still an equation. On one side of the equal sign, I'm going to multiply 4 times 9, which is 36. On the other side of the equal sign, I'm going to multiply 6 times m, which is just 6m. This is the same thing, you guys, as what I started with, and this is just a one-step equation, which is so much easier than what it looked like from the beginning. I'm solving for m. That's the whole goal here, solving for your variable. So I'm just going to divide by 6 on both sides, and I get 6. Example B is the exact same thing. I'm going to cross multiply to get rid of the fractions. The only difference is one part of your fraction is an addition problem. If you see this, an addition or subtraction problem within your fractions, you have to use parentheses. If you don't, you will forget to do a step, and you're about to see what. So bring down your equal sign. On one side of the equal sign, you multiply those two things. So that's 8 times, and I'm going to put it in parentheses, x plus 3. On the other side, multiply the other cross, which is 4 times 7, 28. If you were to forget the parentheses, you would forget to distribute, which is going to totally change your answer. Okay, so be careful. You got to distribute the 8, and then you can solve your two-step equation. Okay, so it's kind of all the same here at a certain point. Be careful with your answer on this one. 4 over 8, that's not 2. 8 over 4 is 2. This is a fraction, and I can actually simplify this. Oh, let's change this. I can divide both of these by 4. Duh. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So the answer is actually 1/2.